Have you ever felt like your life was being unraveled? Like you had a series of events that was going wrong, and it felt like your life was you had no control over it. It just felt like it was being unraveled. You are losing control of your life because of a series of events that is going wrong. Well, there's a guy in the Bible that can really encourages us when we're going through these moments where it feels like our life is out of control and it's being unraveled, and that is Joseph. Joseph has something to say to us about what to do when our life is being unraveled. You think about Joseph's life, his brothers hated him, they were jealous of him, they wanted to kill him, but instead they sold him as a slave. Joseph finds himself in the house of Potiphar, and Potiphar's wife tried to tempt him with adultery, but Joseph wouldn't have any part of it. She then falsely accuses him, and he's thrown into prison, listen to this, for 14 years without cause. It was an injustice. He should not have been there, but he's there for 14 years. And when it looks like Joseph is about ready to get an early release, he's still passed up. Another thing gets in the way that seems like right before a breakthrough, he finds himself something happening and he has a breakdown instead. Have you ever felt like you're really close to a breakthrough, but instead you find yourself in another breakdown? Joseph felt this, but Joseph clung on to God with hope. Joseph had every reason to feel like the unraveling of his life would leave him broken beyond despair. And I'm encouraging us to not feel like, when it feels like our life is being unraveled, don't feel like that you are beyond repair, beyond being restored. That is a trick of what Satan wants you to believe, that the unraveling of your life, that God, where are you? God, you're not even seeing me. But Joseph encourages us to never give up on God and to cling on with hope. He seemed to never give up on God and believed in God's sovereignty. God's sovereignty just simply means that God is in control, that God has all authority and power, and when God feels like He's ready to move in my life, He will do it. Here's what Joseph said. Joseph now is in a place where he's back in second in command of this great nation, the greatest nation on the earth at that time, and he is second in command. He had authority and the power to get back at his brothers, to get revenge of them. But you look at Joseph's character, his integrity, and what God did in his heart. He responds to them in a total different way. But this verse in Genesis chapter 50, verses 19 through 21, actually shows us the theology, if you will, of what Joseph truly believed, his faith, what governed his life, what guided him in these moments. We see this in this verse. But Joseph replied to his brothers and says, "Don't be afraid of me." They knew that they were in trouble when they found out that Joseph had the authority to destroy their life. But he's telling them, hey, don't be afraid of me. Am I God that I can punish you? You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so that I could save the lives of many people. Look at Joseph's perspective. No, don't be afraid. I will continue to care for you and your children. And so he reassured them that by speaking kindly to them. Joseph's heart was in a total different place of where it could have been. But it was because of Joseph's perspective. While he felt like his life was being unraveled, he didn't blame the people in his life. He didn't hold a grudge against them. He wasn't looking for blame. He brought in this thought that, you know what, God, you are in control of my life. And if I am supposed to be in prison, if I'm supposed to be sold as a slave, if you have me in this position, then God, there must be a reason for it. So what intended to unravel you, God uses it actually to reweave His purpose in your life. Think about a shoestring that has a knot in it. You actually have to back the string out and reverse some things so that you can unravel the knot so that it can actually be used the right way. An extension cord. Many of us guys, maybe some of you ladies too, that you've had an extension cord and you're trying to stretch it out across the lawn or across the garage or across the house. but it has 3 or 4 different knots in it because somebody didn't wind it up correctly, and now you have these knots in it. But instead of using it with all knotted, because we know how frustrating that can be, you actually have to back out some of the cord in order to straighten out the extension cord. And I'm going to suggest to you that God, when He is unraveling our life, it's probably because there may be some knots in there that God is wanting to straighten some things out so that we can be actually used for His greater purpose. The unraveling was God also separating Joseph so He could reconnect him for a greater purpose in his life. And I'm suggesting to you that let God use the unraveling in your life to do something, a greater work in your heart, your character, your integrity, so that He can use you. Paul was no stranger to unravelings in his life as well. He was beaten, thrown in prison, again for doing what was right, following God. But he found himself challenged a lot of times. But Paul's perspective was like Joseph. And look what he says in 2 Corinthians 4:8. He says, we are hard pressed on every side, but we're not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but we are not destroyed. I pray you find encouragement today when you feel like your life is being unraveled. Have a greater perspective that God can weave your life and weave the right things into your life to bring a greater purpose in you. Stay encouraged today. God can use the unravelings in your life for His purpose.